What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Powhatan Friday and whatever insanity is going to follow there. And for those of you on YouTube, you will see that I am, in fact, wearing my face mask as Governor Holcomb has requested for all of Indiana until the end of this month here. And for those of you not on YouTube, it's a paper mask with a couple of eye holes cut in it over the upper part of my face here. So now that that joke is done, let's go ahead and get rid of this here. We have a lot to talk about today, and we're going to be imposing some new time limits on our callers when we get to them. And I finally got my little timers, sand timers, delivered, and this is the one for the really good calls. Okay, this one right here, and for the really bad calls, I've got this one right here. So you consider yourself forewarned and forearmed. Anyway, Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when we get there. And as usual, we're going to do news for about half an hour. Then we're going to open the phone lines for a half an hour for your comments on that news. Then another half hour of news and more phone calls till the end of the show. So let's get right on into it. Former White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, who is now with Fox News, I might add, is out there openly challenging Joe Biden for not giving press conferences at the White House. And she's also out there saying that she was given a much harder time by reporters than Jen Psaki is. And that is certainly true if you've been watching Jen up there dealing with these little softball questions. Interestingly enough, Mike Pence, if you remember correctly, he refused to look at the historic fraud in the 2020 election. He basically stabbed Donald Trump in the back. And he went along with certification of the Electoral College. Now, all of a sudden, he's out there trying to polish his election integrity qualifications. He's out there giving lectures on election integrity, which is kind of like Adolf Hitler giving lectures on humanitarianism, I would say. All righty. Andrew Cuomo, who is dealing with a lot of problems right now, has hired Harvey Weinstein's lawyer. And apparently the federal government is now starting to investigate the nursing home scandal, which I think is far more important than these accusations of sexual improprieties early in Cuomo's career. In fact, I think the corporate media is throwing those up there as kind of a limited hangout, a distraction to keep you from really paying attention to just how badly this whole COVID response by the government was mismanaged. FBI Director Christopher Wray defended the FBI's handling of information warning in advance of violence on January 6th and described an increasingly complex extremist threat landscape in the wake of the attack on the U.S. Capitol. And I find that very worrying for reasons I will give you very, very shortly. So Wray came on out and said the problem of domestic terrorism has been metastasizing across the country for a long time now, and it's not going away anytime soon. And in some cases, it seems like people are coming up with their own sort of customized belief systems. Horror of horrors. We're all coming up and deciding for ourselves what we're going to believe in. Obviously, that is something the government is very, very concerned about, or at least Christopher Wray is very, very concerned about that. So more from the Christopher Wray hearing, the GOP senators did not ask any question about the bombs that were found on January 5th, Ashley Babbitt's killer, the isolation and torture of Trump supporters, or the rumored planned bombing of Biden's talk. Those apparently were considered off-limit questions. Now, we've all seen the story. It came out a few days ago where Donald Trump offered to bring 10,000 National Guard to protect the Capitol building back on January 6th, and Nancy Pelosi turned him down. And now we get this story. This is coming out of Station Gossip. The Pentagon took 3 hours and 19 minutes to respond to the request to dispatch National Guard forces to defend the Capitol after the January 6th breach. This is the commanding D.C. general telling senators in this hearing about what happened back then. It was all a mistake. It was an oversight. No ill intent here. Just trust us. It was all an honest mistake. Trump has confirmed that Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell were in on the Capitol riots, and it is looking more and more like the narrative that Trump somehow incited the violence is falling apart. It's been completely debunked. Now, this story is worrying me, and I've seen it in a couple of places. This one is appearing in the Epic Times here. The U.S. Capitol Police are saying that it has learned of a possible threat against members of Congress and the Capitol complex by, quote, an identified militia group, end quote. And it's due to hit tomorrow. And they're saying we've made upgrades to the security, and there have been an increase of threats to members of Congress, which anybody with a phone bank can do. And I have to tell you, this is feeling like another setup for a false flag, where they're going to send a bunch of Antifa, Black Lives Matter thugs in there to smash up the place and try and blame it on Trump and Trump supporters. So another story along the same line. This one is out of Hideout Now. Threats to lawmakers have nearly doubled in the first 2 months of 2021 as security is ramped up in D.C. ahead of reports of plot by far-right group to breach the Capitol on Thursday. And like I said, these are all over the place, and it's feeling like a propaganda setup to me. Meanwhile, Black Lives Matter shut down traffic in Louisville, Kentucky, and this happened last night. They were trying to show support for Breonna Taylor and were screaming obscenities at the police. Apparently, one police sergeant, John Mattingly, was shot during the exchange, but he has recovered. So he was only mildly wounded. Thank goodness there. All right, getting into COVID-19, and again here in Indiana, we're going to have to keep on wearing our masks until the end of the month there. So there's mine. But Texas and Mississippi have ended their mask mandates, and they're allowing businesses to reopen full capacity. The lockdown is over. Texas started officially today. Mississippi will open tomorrow. And Governor Abbott said in a news conference, it's now time to open Texas 100%. And he said COVID has not suddenly disappeared, but it is clear from the recoveries and from the vaccinations to the reduced hospitalizations and from the safe practices that Texas is using that state mandates are no longer required. So it's the beginning of the pushback by the states against all this lockdown nonsense. And I'm hearing other states like South Carolina are getting ready to basically follow along. It's the start of the dominoes falling all across the country. Of course, the official world is not happy with that, and Biden is planning a showdown with these states, and Biden is urging Americans to act aggressively against COVID after Texas and Mississippi lifted all restrictions and more governors relaxed the rules for businesses, schools, restaurants, and bars. Anyway, here's an article that really tells the story about what's been going on. This is from thespectator.org, and it's looking at this last year, saying which experts were right about the lockdowns. And they're saying after a year, it's clear that most of the media and government experts were dead wrong. The lockdowns did not help, and indeed they caused quite a bit of damage, both economically and mentally, to a lot of people. We're hearing all these stories about young people that are under such mental stress from the isolation. They're doing self-harm, and they're overdosing on drugs. And there's another story, this one coming out of Sky News, saying that for every 3 COVID-19 deaths, the lockdowns may have caused another 2. and they're saying that the national lockdown may have indirectly caused 16,000 deaths in just 2 months. So I'm glad everybody is pushing back, but not everybody, okay? Because the leftists are vowing they will continue wearing masks in Texas, despite Governor Greg Abbott ending the statewide mandate. And this, of course, is going to make things very easy for conservatives who are driving along the roads there, because you just aim for the people wearing the masks. So numerous Twitter users responded to Greg Abbott's announcement that he would allow businesses to open 100% and end the mask mandate by vowing to continue wearing masks and boycott businesses that don't enforce them. So once again, they're out there thinking, they're in charge, and they're not. And it's interesting. One of the articles I posted to whatreallyhappened.com earlier today was a look back at what was called the Stanford prison experiment. And this was an experiment by a psychologist where they took a whole bunch of student volunteers, and just with the flip of a coin, some were designated guards and some were designated prisoners, and they were going to be put in this simulated jail for 2 weeks just to see how their behavior would change in that environment. And they had to end this experiment after only 6 days, because the students who, with the flip of a coin, had been made the guards became sadistic and brutal, and the students who were designated the prisoners became mentally stressed and depressed, and very, very damaged. And I think we're seeing the same experiment being done on a nationwide basis here, where the leftists, having usurped the throne at the White House, now see themselves as in charge, the guards, and the rest of us as being subordinate to them, meaning we are the prisoners. And of course, we are not prisoners, and we should never act like that anyway. But if you look at the arrogance that's coming out of the liberal left with the trans agenda and banning Dr. Seuss, they clearly think they're now in charge of our society, and to heck with what the state governors are going to say. Over in Great Britain, data is showing another 402 reports of deaths following the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. Actually, this is the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, including 77% more adverse effects and 25% more deaths. But the UK regulators are not saying anything about it. As a side note, the FDA is out there saying that we're going to see fewer side effects from the newly approved Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which thankfully is already here in Indiana, and a couple of vaccine sites are already up in the local area. So I still want to wait and see if there are serious adverse reactions from that one. But, the Lady Claire is going to be getting the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, because without it, they will not let her see her mother, who was in a nursing home. So, it's very coercive, and it's becoming mandated, and we'll see what happens there with the Johnson & Johnson. But already people are saying it won't have the negative effects that the mRNA vaccines had. Over in Spain, another 9 care home residents have died. 78 are infected with COVID-19 days after receiving Pfizer's mRNA jab. And again, this happened to my doctor, who got the Pfizer vaccine and 3 days later came down with COVID and proceeded to give it to her entire family. Of course, she's convinced that, she must have had COVID before the vaccine, even though she felt absolutely wonderful. I have a somewhat different point of view. Down in Florida, there are now reports of hundreds of COVID-19 vaccine side effects, including some deaths. This is coming from the CDC, and they're, first of all, starting to say that 65 million vaccine doses have been administered in America. And given that vaccines are, Dr. Fauci has claimed up to 90% of Americans will need to line up for the jab to achieve herd immunity. We're a long way off from where Big Pharma wants us to be, which is standing here with our wallets absolutely empty. But apparently some of the adverse effects being reported with the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are hallucinations, fever, and chills. And the number of people with adverse effects keeps climbing. There's a new analysis. This is being reported from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s website, the Children's Health Defense Network. And there's a new analysis showing that the Pfizer vaccine has killed about 40 times more elderly people than the disease itself would have killed. And this, of course, certainly reminds us all of what happened back in 1976 with the swine flu vaccine. So it's a mess out there. It really, really is. Over in Great Britain, their health authorities are admitting that not a single case of influenza has been detected this year. What made it magically go away? Well, absolutely nothing. Flu cases are being misdiagnosed as COVID to drive those numbers up, to maintain the fear factor. There really is no other possible explanation. All right, a third of all military personnel are refusing to receive the COVID-19. Alarmed commanders are trying to make the shot mandatory as soon as possible, but they're up against both the Nuremberg Code and U.S. law. Now, remember, these vaccines are not FDA approved. They are being released with an emergency authorization, but it doesn't mean they're approved. And under U.S. law, you cannot be given an experimental treatment without your informed consent. Right? And a lot of military personnel are reluctant to get the vaccine due to the anthrax vaccine scandal back in the 1990s. Now, in 1997, the government made it mandatory for military personnel to receive the anthrax vaccine, but huge numbers of service members complained of debilitating side effects, and there was a massive legal battle ensued to try and get their medical costs compensated for. Right, over in France, half of their home health workers say they will not take the vaccine. And it's basically showing there is a global trend of hesitancy and skepticism regarding this big push to make sure that everybody gets that needle in their arm. And, you know, the high pressure sales techniques are one of the things that makes me very, very leery about what's going on. As you know, we're coming up on the Tokyo Olympics, and there's this Jamaican sprinter, Johan Blake, who is, you know, a contender, and he came on out and said that he would rather miss the Olympics than take the vaccine because the Tokyo Olympics are making it a requirement for all of the entrants to be vaccinated. In response to a phone call, or more than a few phone calls we had regarding fracking, there's this article that came on out talking about the fracking chemicals. This is from Global Research up in Canada. And when they frack the rock to get the oil, they're not using water. They're using a mixture of chemicals to help dissolve the rock. Some of it is carcinogenic. Some of it is actually radioactive. We had somebody who worked for a fracking company call into the show a couple of years ago saying that the fracking companies were making deals with other corporations to pump their hazardous waste down into these wells where they couldn't get rid of the waste any other way, in the hope that it would stay down there and never percolate up to the surface. Well, unfortunately, it is percolating up to the surface, and these fracking chemicals are being detected inside children. So that is definitely not a good thing. Turning to the international news, inspectors, investigators, comptrollers, if you will, are starting to look at where all the money has gone in all of these wars fought by the United States. It's trillions and trillions of dollars. Now they're looking at Afghanistan, where the United States has been for going on 20 years. And they're finding that the billions of dollars poured into Afghanistan was largely unmonitored. They just poured money into the place, and as a result, it fueled runaway corruption within the government. All right, we got to take a break for commercials, and we will be back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, and again, a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network needs you. And the network needs you to go on supporting what we're doing, which is to keep the American public fully informed, to speak truth to power, to point out corruption, to point out election fraud, to basically stand as a bulwark against corporate social media, basically censoring what's left of freedom and history and the Constitution here in the United States of America. So once again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. And remember, if you send in a mail-in donation of $100 or more, include your t-shirt size and a return address, and you'll get one of these spiffy official RBN t-shirts along with the attendant bragging rights there. And don't forget, the front site deal is on again, and for those of you who are Second Amendment enthusiasts, that is a really, really sweet deal. All right, getting on back to the international news. Over in Iraq, prominent Islamic State leaders have been killed. And there was concerns that the sharp drawdown of the international troops over the past year might negatively impact counterterrorism activities, but Iraq has announced the killing of several high-level commanders and operatives since late January, which may have been done to justify sending troops back in. With Biden in the White House, cannot rule that out. So the top Islamic State commander for Iraq, Abu Yasser al-Isawi, the nom de guerre of Jabbar Salman al-Asawi, 39-year-old native of Fallujah, was killed in the southern part of the Kirkuk region only a week ago. So the violence is continuing in Iraq. Boy, we really messed up that place. Again, in Iraq, a civilian contractor was killed in a rocket strike against a U.S. airbase in Iraq just days after Joe Biden's airstrike killed 22 in an attack on what are claimed to have been Iranian-backed militants at the Syria-Iraq border. Now, the Pope is out there saying that he is still going to travel to Iraq this Friday, despite the rocket attack. He wants to visit the military base hosting U.S. troops. He's asking people to pray for him. And, you know, let's hope that he gets in and out safely. Let's hope that they all get in and out safely. Interesting little article. This is coming from My Singapore News, and it is an insight into where the government of China may be going, and certainly the way it's being encouraged to go, because China used a military plane to ferry some injured workers from the South China Sea back to the mainland for treatment, and the American government demanded an explanation from China, acting as if they own the islands and China is one of the colonies. And this editorial is saying China should simply tell the United States government to blank off. So there's a lot of hostility definitely building up in that part of the world toward the United States. The United Nations is falling short on aid to Yemen. Apparently, governments that have made commitments for donations are not living up to those commitments. So the money is just not there. They were looking to get $3.85 billion. But countries are cutting back on the donations, citing the COVID-19 pandemic as the reason. Over in Ukraine, and 7 years after the Maidan, Ukraine has intensified shelling of the Donbass region, and the Western media, corporate media, pretty much isn't covering it. That situation is clearly deteriorating again. The ceasefire has been broken, but we're not going to pay attention to that. We're going to do the normal evening news for the corporate media, which is, you know, several disasters followed by a fashion show. Over in South Africa, things are heating up there. White South African mercenaries are starting to indiscriminately kill people in Mozambique. Now, these mercenaries have been hired by the Mozambique government, And they basically carried out helicopter attacks and killed civilians as part of the escalating war in neighboring Mozambique. This is not, yes, and Mozambique is next door to South Africa. Anyway, 53 witnesses interviewed by Amnesty International claim that forces from a South African private military company known as the Dick Advisory Group fired machine guns from helicopters and dropped hand grenades indiscriminately into crowds of people, failing to differentiate between civilians and military targets. That definitely is a war crime. Now, for the last few years, the Philippines has been showing signs of pulling away from the United States. Oh, we got to take another break. We're going to open the phone lines, area code 512-248-8252, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and the phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Charles in St. Pete. So, Charles, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, how you doing, Mike? Yeah, I just saw a David Icke video where he's interviewing a woman that was high up in the Homeland Security in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
She says a lot of the things they're going to be requiring stuff that everybody at home, families, to fill out paperwork week by week. It'll be compulsory.
And what will this paperwork? What will this paperwork report?
Well, it require people, the family members, to fill out stuff and be compulsory. As Homeland Security is a real tyrannical outfit, evidently. You're going to, not just COVID-19, but I mean, all the potential diseases. They're having other problems with these so-called things like Ebola, and
yeah, the new scary monster here. Boy, I mean, they're going to create a whole new industry just processing all that paperwork. 330 million pieces of paper every week.
Every week.
Yep.
Well, you have to look at the thing and see if I'm giving you the right. But this was on over on what's his name, Alex Jones's channel, Banned Videos. I think
yes.
It was on Banned Videos. It's very interesting. I mean, they're not going to quit with COVID-19. I hope the states are able, or a lot of this more conservative states that aren't dominated by Democrats, can open up this country. But they're just going to forge ahead.
Yeah.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Pedal to the metal, because if they slow down, they fear, Americans are waking up. They're realizing the election was stolen. They're realizing that the lockdowns for COVID were not really needed. The masks were all but useless. And people are getting very, very angry at the obvious incompetence and mismanagement of the entire U.S. government. And every day on TV, all we see our so-called leaders do is behave like children in that giant romper room on the Potomac.
Well, it didn't start a year ago. It started 20 years ago with 911, with the Patriot Act, Military Preparedness Act, all these things that did away with the Bill of Rights, the setting up of Homeland Security, which is, I am very suspicious of its name, and something that is right out of Germany, like a Stasi or something. Homeland. We don't use that. Even in England, they don't talk about the homeland. What is a homeland? Sounds like somebody from Central Europe made up the.
Yeah, a lot of people commented when they created that department. People said it had sort of resonances to the old Soviet Union or Nazi Germany. Not the homeland, but the fatherland.
Or the Stasis.
Yeah.
More like the Stasi. Yeah, well, that's just about what I wanted to say. I can't think of anything else.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to switch to Mike in Arizona. Hello, Mike. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
That's cerebrospinal fluid, Mike.
Okay.
Hey, a couple of things. Some things on the home front from the Biden administration. There was a petition form that was placed on the White House website, and if people wanted to get a cause going, if they had enough people that had signed the petition, then they would look into it. And that petition had been kept up during the Trump administration, but now this week they have removed that petition form from the White House.
Yeah, the entire petition website is now gone. They don't want to hear from you anymore. They don't need your votes.
They've also removed the phone-in comment line to call into the White House. And last week they removed the comment space from their YouTube White House website. Also, it made news here in Arizona yesterday. It was a big car wreck in Southern California, San Diego area, and they initially said that 6 people had died. Now this morning they said 13 people had died, and now they're investigating human smuggling because the SUV that collided with the 18-wheeler, they had all the back seats removed, just the front 2 were in there for the driver and the assistant, and they had 26 people packed in there, so there's some developing on that story. And that's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the phone call and our, let's see, okay. Let's see. Okay, we're going to do that. I'm getting a message from the control room. We're going to go back to doing news for, until more callers start calling on in here. We were talking about how the Philippines over the last few years seems to be moving away from the United States. They denied the U.S. permission to set up a new military base there some years ago. They're now buying weapons from other countries and not the United States. And most recently, the Philippines have signed an agreement to buy the Russian-Indian BrahMos supersonic cruise missile. And BrahMos Aerospace is a joint venture by India and Russia. They're basically pushing their powerful anti-ship supersonic cruise missiles in Southeast Asia and the Middle East, a total of 14 countries they're marketing to. The missile is considered the world's deadliest and can hit a target at a speed of around Mach 3. 3 times the speed of sound. And so the Philippines have signed an agreement for a supply of these cruise missiles just yesterday, in fact. So they're arming up. Everybody seems to know there's going to be a Pacific component to the coming World War. Now, speaking of missiles, under the terms of the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, officials from the U.S. and Russia are allowed to inspect each other's weapons. So a U.S. team has had a chance to inspect one of Russia's new silo-launched Avangard hypersonic missiles. And the Ministry of Defense announced the inspection had occurred in a statement actually all the way back in 2019. But American personnel had first arrived at the visit 2 days earlier. Previous reports said the Russians had placed the first 2 operational examples of Avangard in silos sometime earlier in the month. And the Avangard is a major game changer. It is hypersonic and has a very, very long range. And not really sure the U.S. has anything to defend itself against that one. Interestingly enough, Biden's White House yesterday unveiled new sanctions against Russia for the alleged poisoning of Alexei Navalny and said that part of the sanctions are the U.S. bans exports of U.S. weapon systems to Russia. This coming from Joe Biden. Russia replied back and said, Mr. Biden, we hate to be the ones to break this to you, but we haven't imported any American weapons since World War II. Article coming on out from Information Clearinghouse. It's called the Pentagon First, Last, and Always. And what they're basically saying is that our country is really in serious trouble. We've got all the people who are sick or dead from COVID-19. Food insecurity is rapidly rising. 24 million Americans are going hungry, including 12 million children. Unemployment claims have reached 93 million. And where is the money going? It's going to the Pentagon. It's going to the weapons. It's going to the things that go bang. All right. Dr. Peter Navarro, who was a confidant of Donald Trump, is saying there's a rot in the Biden economy. He says inflation is definitely up. They're trying to hide it, but it's definitely up because of all the creation of money out of thin air that's going on. Another article along the same line, this is from Wall Street on Parade, and they're saying that back in September 17th of 2019, long before there was any report of a COVID-19 case anywhere in the world, the Federal Reserve turned on its money printing system to the trading houses on Wall Street. And by October 23rd, 2019, the Fed announced it was upping these loans to $690 billion a week again, long before any report of COVID-19. So within a span of 6 months, the Federal Reserve pumped out a cumulative $9 trillion with a T in loans to Wall Street's trading houses to basically keep them afloat. And nobody really knows which Wall Street firms were getting the bulk of that money. It's more than a year later, and the American people still have no idea what triggered the so-called repo loan crisis, or which Wall Street firms are in trouble or remain in trouble. Down in Texas, and we could see this coming, the biggest electricity co-op, Brazos, has now filed for bankruptcy after a $2.1 billion power bill. This is part of the fallout from the energy crash that left millions in the dark. And again, because of limits on domestic production of electricity imposed by, the green agenda, Brazos and other Texas electric companies had to buy electricity across the grid from outside the state. Now, Texas has its own grid, but they still have interconnects that go to other power systems in order to level the load. But the largest and oldest electricity co-op in Texas is now filing for bankruptcy protection. Okay. Along that same line, story out of CBS Local, energy experts say Texas can't just look at the state's power grid operator ERCOT and power plant companies when trying to figure out what went wrong with the massive outages that are going to happen during future winter storms. Joshua Rhodes with the Weber Energy Group at University of Texas at Austin said it's time to basically look at the electricity and the gas grids holistically, meaning it's time to basically evaluate our infrastructure for energy across the entire country and take a look at maybe getting that back up to battery, so to speak. And somebody once estimated it's going to be a $7 trillion project to update all of the gas and electric lines to modern standards. But they're going to have to do it sooner or later, because as Americans switch to electrically powered vehicles, there just isn't the generating capacity to recharge them all. It's another good example of how something sounds real good at first. We're all going to be driving electric cars, and they don't think it all the way through. All righty. Democrats' COVID bill gives $1.9 billion to black farmers for racial justice. And I'll bet you thought that COVID bill was all about COVID-19 and helping Americans who were crushed by the COVID economy and the regular economy as well. And like so many other things with the government, it is not being taken care of. Apparently, more than 92,000 black people signed up for reparations, and that turned out to be 5 times the number of blacks who were actually farming during the time period in question. So apparently there have even been so-called farmers from inner city Chicago signing up for this farmer handout. Amazing here. Story coming on out from Natural News. And observers are saying that the Securities and Exchange Commission appears to be banning trading in any public stock that might turn a profit for these smaller investors. And this article is saying it is becoming obvious that the SEC is a criminal organization that aids and abets the money junkies in raping and pillaging the average Americans while quietly overseeing the transfer of all the nation's wealth to the 1%. Rich get richer and the poor get laid off. Right. Getting into immigration news. There is a study showing that Joe Biden's Amnesty Plan, which also expands legal immigration levels, would bring a new population into the United States equal to that of the state of California. Now, last month, House and Senate Democrats introduced the Biden plan, known as House Resolution 1177 and Senate Bill 348, which would give amnesty to roughly 11 to 22 million illegal immigrants currently living in the United States, while doubling the annual legal immigration to the country, flooding the labor market with more foreign competition for the nation's more than 17 million jobless Americans. Doesn't sound like good management to me. The analysis was done by Numbers USA, which advocates on behalf of American workers for less foreign competition in the domestic labor market. Okay. Now, we had a caller who mentioned this a little bit before. There was this Ford SUV, which is designed to carry 8 people. It had its back seats all removed, and there were 25 illegal immigrants crammed into this thing. Think about those little tiny cars with all the clowns that come out of them at the circus, kind of like that. And it got hit by a semi-truck in an accident near the Mexican border in California, and at least 13 that. And interestingly enough, apparently the number has been raised to 15. Over at Involve.com, they're saying that the 15 dead from the human smuggling accident is a direct result of Biden's immigration actions. I'm not sure I really see the point they're trying to make. If anything, these guys in the SUV didn't need to be in the SUV because of Biden's opening up of the borders. But maybe they had committed to this and paid for it, before Biden took office. All righty, we've got to take another break for commercials. The phone lines are open. Area code 248-8252, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Doing fine.
Mike, you earlier about, Texas again opening up and Mississippi. You say South Carolina also?
South Carolina is getting ready to rescind at least part of their mandates. I don't have the details, but I think it's mostly along the lines of allowing businesses to open and go back to, full capacity indoor dining and that sort of thing.
I don't think South Carolina really even has it. Has a mask mandate. It's this state here in North Carolina, due to this miserable excuse for a governor that we have a mask mandate. And businesses are only allowed to open up to a certain degree. I think South Carolina has been fully open, but I'm not sure. But anyway, either way, with governors of places like Texas and all that, they got to stand strong. See, Alex Jones was going over something today in the fine print that Abbott was saying that he was going to, this is provided the so-called numbers don't go up.
Yep.
They can do anything in all these numbers with the PCR test. They can declare, they can say if you stubbed your toe, you got COVID-19. Okay?
Yes.
I mean, this is what they're capable of doing. So they got to they call this thing out what it really is, a scam. Another thing I have a problem with is Republicans like Ted Cruz. He gave a big speech today again, all the China scare, China's this and that, and then said, because of them, we lost 500,000 Americans died from COVID-19. 500,000 people did not die from COVID-19, you fool. I'm saying when you fool, I'm talking about Cruz. Okay?
Yeah.
A small fraction of those people died of COVID-19. They had multiple other conditions, and they called it COVID-19, just as like you were just pointing out about the flu. The flu didn't disappear. The COVID-19 virus didn't eat the flu virus, okay? And people are not catching the flu because they're social distancing and wearing a stupid mask. The reason why is very simple. They're declaring just about every respiratory disease you can imagine, from the common cold to the flu, as COVID-19.
Yes.
This is a big scam. And people got to get used. I don't know what the story with China, whether this is a biological weapon by China or not, or whether this is a biological weapon by our own people like Gates and Fauci. I have a feeling that what we really have got is, viruses mutate. Flus mutate, colds mutate. This is some kind of a mutating flu or cold that they figure now's the time we can scare the SHIT out of the American people and other people around the world and say this is some kind of a new horrible plague, and we can scare them.
Okay, Mark, stay on the line. Mark, stay on the line. I'm going to put you on hold. We're going to do station identification. Then we'll come on back. We'll pick up with Mark in North Carolina. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. And what we're going to do, because we had an interruption earlier in the program, we're going to leave the phone lines open for the rest of the show. Area code 512-248-8252. And when you call on in, we'll take your call. And when you don't call on in, I'm going to do more news. And we'll just see how that works for a while. So we were talking with Mark in North Carolina. We're talking about the states reopening and how, the governors are really beginning to feel the pressure from the American people that this has just gone on way, way too long. I mean, a year ago, March of 2020, they were telling us this was only going to be for 2 weeks. And here we are a year later, and they're already trying to sell the idea that the social distancing and the masks are going to go in to 2022, which I think is absolutely absurd. So, Mark, just sort of pick up where you left off.
Yeah, these governors not only have to remain strong, they have to make, you see that Biden is making noise now. They have to make it clear to the federal government that we have states' rights,
yes,
and that they are willing to enforce these states' rights, even to the point of using the National Guard and whatever law enforcement and whatever militia type of people they have of making sure these states aren't interfered with. Okay, that the the federal government doesn't send its agents or anything else in there. They should make it clear that if the FBI or anybody else comes in to try to take away the rights of the people of these states, that the states will even arrest them if they have to. Because anything is possible. This demented old fool is in the White House now, is capable of just about anything. Okay, he's not working with 52 cards in the deck. And
I don't think he's working all that much at all. I think basically, he's just signing papers being put in front of him, and he doesn't even really know what's on them. In fact, there was even one video from just when he entered the White House where he was just looking at the paper and say, "I don't even know what I'm signing." And somebody off camera said, "Well, just sign it anyway."
Let's just hope he doesn't sign. He signed something to start a nuclear war with Russia or China or both.
Well,
it's not totally out of the realm of possibility.
Well, the only positive hope there is, they give him this little card with 10 sets of numbers, and he's supposed to pick one of them that is his key to launch the nuclear weapons. And when it comes right down to it, he may not remember which number he picked.
That's true. I mean, this man is an absolute disaster. And
yes.
the problem is, I joke about it, about the nuclear war possibility, but you've got madmen in this work that pretty much want to get rid of the human race anyway. That's part of their. I was listening earlier to Alex Jones. He had on what the heck's that guy's name? Steve Quayle. Quayle, and Steve Quayle doesn't paint a pretty picture of the people in charge. So it is not out of the realm of possibility that some of these psychopaths might want just that, a nuclear war between the United States and Russia, and get rid of most of the world's population right there.
Yeah, but you see, that also destroys all the buildings and factories and, damages nature. So it would be far better from their point of view to do it with some kind of a pandemic that only affects humans, or some kind of a vaccination program that renders us all sterile, which, of course, Bill Gates has been promoting for a very, very long time.
Yeah, but thank God. I shouldn't say it because there's still enough people who've taken it already. But it seems like people are getting smarter and smarter about these vaccines.
Yes.
And it's another thing. These governors have to stop saying the vaccines are helping curb it. No, it's not helping curb anything. It's actually killing people.
Yes.
Curbing it is that finally, like it started with Florida. They're starting to force these doctors and scientists to stop with the PCR test, to stop. Mm-hmm. I don't quite understand about the 35 to 40 circles or whatever it is, but it's evidently that they're doing everything they can to make somebody have COVID, even if they don't have COVID. Period. So that's one of the problems, and people are getting wise to it, and hopefully less and less people are taking these vaccines. I know a lot of old people are taking them.
Yes.
Seems to be, they're so scared of COVID and all that. It's a shame they don't understand what it's doing to them. But a lot of young people, there are some young people that are talking about. I'm having a hard time. I'm trying to convince my sons, please do not take it, please. But they seem to they want to protect me. I says, you don't have to worry about me. I go out and do what I want to do. I don't lock myself in the house.
Yes.
I'm out there. I don't wear a mask. Okay, unless I go to a store and you have to wear it. I look for stores you don't even have to wear them in. I go places where I don't have, I don't, it doesn't scare me because I wasn't worried about the flu before because I take enough nutrition. I have enough nutritional. I get enough sunshine and fresh air and exercise that I don't say I couldn't get something. Yeah, anybody, but it's not very likely. Or if I do get it, probably won't be that serious. All right? So you're not protecting me. Just understand that. And hopefully they'll understand because I'm really worried about it. That's what worries me. I know I'm not going to take that vaccine. There's no way I'm going to take that vaccine. I don't know about the Johnson & Johnson. I don't know if that's more of a traditional vaccine, but even if it is, I didn't take a regular flu vaccine either.
Well, it's still a gene therapy vaccine, but it's using a much more stable full DNA molecule rather than the less stable mRNA. But like I said, it's just now going into use, and I want to wait a week or maybe two and see if we're getting reports of adverse effects from that. But again, the FDA is assuring us, hands on a stack of Bibles, that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is going to have less serious side effects than the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines.
But how does that? If it's a gene therapy, isn't it the same thing as with the mRNA?
Well, it's going to operate in a slightly different way. Again, my concern is the natural instability of RNA as a molecule.
Oh, see, I'm concerned too about the long-term effects of these things.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? Could it cause Alzheimer's? Some people could it cause cancer? There's a lot of possibilities.
Did you listen to yesterday's show?
Part of it, yeah.
Yeah, because we had that report from Sloan Kettering where their scientists have discovered.
Right.
Yeah, it suppresses the anti-tumor proteins in the body, which that shot, you are more likely to get cancer now.
I even looked it up after you said that's right. I even looked it up. It said, according to what I read on Sloan Kettering, they said, well, this is just a temporary thing. It'll go away in a month. But, you know, I don't trust them either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just the fact that it showed up in the lymph glands and stuff. This is very, very dangerous. And people got to, you know, people got to understand, why would you want to take this anyway? You're talking about a virus that's probably not even as dangerous as the flu, okay?
Yes.
And why would you want to take a dangerous so-called vaccine? It's not really a vaccine anyway, because you're worried about something that's really not much to worry about. What is it, 99.9.7% of the people who get it survive?
Oh, yeah.
And seem to be fine afterwards. I mean, come on, folks. It's not that bad. It is not this is not the end of the world virus, but it will be the end of the world if we let these monsters get away.
Remember what Merck said, that they had given up on their vaccine program because their studies were showing that you were better off getting COVID and recovering from it than you were, having the vaccine.
That's surprising too. A pharmaceutical company with some kind of honesty, you know.
Well, they've been sued so many times. Maybe they're getting flinchy here. Anyway, listen, Mark. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. Your little timer just ran out, and we're going to go to Kelly in Austin. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I want to tell you that Texas isn't open yet.
Okay.
The effective date is the 10th, March 10th. So it's
okay.
Today.
All right. Well, it was misreported then.
The liberals in Austin are already having conniption fits.
Yes.
It's funny to watch them come unglued. They're threatening to boycott businesses that open.
Yes.
100%, and then that don't require masks. But I think that's going to backfire on them. The businesses here.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah,
businesses want to open, and people want to do business with those businesses. And, the businesses that are closed are doing no business. If the liberals boycott the businesses over the masks, they'll still be doing half the business they were doing before, and that's got to be an improvement.
Yeah. Well, liberals aren't happy unless they're grousing about something.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, you'll never find a happy liberal.
I've often said, Mike, that a liberal who doesn't have something to grouse about is an unhappy liberal.
Yes, absolutely.
So, but a liberal who's grousing, who claims he's outraged, that's a happy liberal.
Ah, okay. I stand corrected.
Been a bit of a paradox.
Yes.
Yeah. He's grousing about something that makes him happy. Okay.
Yes.
I'm outraged.
Makes him feel fulfilled. I mean, that's part of their identity, to always being, screaming about something. The, Dr. Seuss or, pink bubble gum or whatever it is they're on the warpath against now.
Oh, by the way, you should look at Michael Ramirez's cartoon today. You know who Michael Ramirez is?
I've heard of him, yes.
Cartoons, political cartoonist. I'll send you the cartoon. It's a takeoff on Dr. Seuss.
That's going to be precious, yes.
I'll send it to you. Okay, Mike, thanks for taking the call.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to go to Dan in Western Colorado. Hello, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, long-time follower, listen to you on a regular basis. I've got some good news for you. I'll make it short.
Please do.
With all the stuff going around, I'm getting reports that Joe's got half a mind to just pack it in. Thank you.
Well, he only has half a mind to begin with. Okay, let's go to another Daniel, this one in Virginia Beach. Hello, Daniel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. That was pretty funny. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. You're on the air.
All right, great. This new technology I'm messing with. Second call. But yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that. The last callers that talked about the not getting the shot.
Yep.
I'm curious about. Have callers called in about getting a robo-text or some sort from something called Mercury? Some press N for no or yes or Y for yes if you're going to get the shot or not.
No, I haven't. Wait a minute. I got some email from the Census Bureau last week that, along with a bunch of other questions, said, "Are you going to get the vaccination?" And I said no.
I just deleted it myself. I didn't respond. So, yeah. But also, another caller talked about the return in service. Military personnel getting refusing or not getting shots. Why aren't they vaccinating them? And from the local news here in Virginia Beach, we got a lot of military here.
Yeah.
Talking about they because it's a choice, and I was prior service for 15 years myself. The choice is given to get the shot or not. They just, if they have the right to say no, then they're going to say no.
They do.
Yeah, that's right. I wish I would have had that option when the anthrax shots came out that you talked about also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because those I didn't get no side effects from those, but the arm was sore because it was actually I had to get 2 shots before they stopped the program.
Okay.
Another COVID thing I wanted to talk about is: have you ever reported on return in service? This is back in late February or March of last year, I believe. Return in service members from China quarantined. They were quarantined for I don't know how long.
I remember that. Yes.
Did you ever hear anything about
we
that?
did. We did talk about that. This is when Trump was trying to shut travel down with China unsuccessfully, I'm afraid. And U.S. military coming back from that part of the world were definitely isolated. Yeah,
the question I had right off the bat is what are we doing in China? What do we have military members in China for?
That's a very, very good question, and my answer would be I don't know. Maybe they were in Taiwan, which is sort of loosely grouped with China, but there may have been some kind of swap going on. I really do not know the details, or whether it was mainland China or the Republic of China, which is Taiwan.
Yeah, there was only one other syndicated national radio host that mentioned it, but never covered it. He said he's going to get back to it and never did. So,
okay.
What I really wanted to talk to you about, Mike, it's been bothering me for a long time, and it happened when I first started listening to you, which is, do you remember when Obama came to Hawaii? It was like some kind of Pacific meeting of all the leaders back in 2011, I think it was.
I remember it, and it just caused no end of traffic jams.
Because they walled off. I was out there at the time.
So was I.
The entire. Yes, you were. I know. They walled off like half of Waikiki.
Yes.
And I was staying at the Marriott Residence Inn, I believe it was at the time, and I had to walk. Just to go around we had other people that were working the ships at the time on other places. You had to walk all around these huge white walls. The Democrats talk about walls, are racist and all that. What about that time?
Oh, well, the Democrats have been very hypocritical about walls. I mean, look at the walls they're building around the Capitol building right now, and by all reports, they're going to stay there for a very, very long time. But a wall on our southern border, ooh, that's bad. That's bad. We can't have that.
They're very hypocritical, for sure.
Yes, they are.
But what happened during that event that I was wondering if you ever talked about also was there was a shooting that took place at the McDonald's.
Yes, I remember that. We did report on that. One of the Secret Service agents got into an argument with a local at the McDonald's. I know the McDonald's specifically they were talking about because I've been there myself, and wound up with the Secret Service agent gunning down this local Hawaiian, which caused a tremendous outrage on the island. The official story was changed to say that he wasn't really part of the Secret Service. He was just a hired special agent, and it was no real big deal, which may have placated the rest of the country, but it certainly did not calm things down in Hawaii. Everybody was just absolutely outraged that it happened, especially, in association with Obama, who was considered, Hawaii's star for being president.
I know it.
Yeah.
More hypocrisy at its best, for sure.
Yep.
And just to follow up what you just said, because I was out there, I was working the ships as a contractor, and talking with the locals that were with us working on the job, they were very upset about
They
that.
were angry. Yes, it was very angry. All right. Well, listen, Daniel, I'm sorry. Your timer has run out, and we got to take a break for commercials. So we'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. Welcome back to our show, and the phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to James in Vancouver. Hello, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today? Oh, we lost James. All right. Well, the phone lines are now completely open. And let's see. Let's go back and find some more news to talk about. We were talking about immigration, and something that we were concerned about and warned about just last week has actually happened. There is a story coming out of legalinsurrection.com basically saying that these migrants who are crossing our border and being released into the United States are testing positive for COVID. The problem is the tests are being administered after they're released. There's no grabbing them and putting them in quarantine or sending them back home. They're just being allowed to pour on in, bringing more COVID infections with them. That does not sound like a really good, well thought out policy to me. So, and I'm sure you'll probably agree. Meanwhile, the Internal Revenue Service sent a total of $46,378,000 in refunds to what are politely termed unauthorized workers at one address in Atlanta, Georgia. This is a report from the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. This was brought to light last year by WTHR-TV in Indianapolis. And the IRS $46 million in refunds included 23,994 tax payouts sent to this one address in 2011. Now, as the audit report discloses, the Atlanta address is one of several that received a high number of refunds for individual taxpayer identification number tax returns. Now, these taxpayer identification numbers are issued to those who are ineligible to obtain a Social Security number, meaning they are illegal immigrants. But it seems like the applications for these identification numbers is somehow flawed, and the system is being gamed. All right, getting into the world of wokeness and political correction. I absolutely love this one, just how hypersensitive people are becoming. There are two teenage boys that are suing an exclusive Catholic school for $20 million. And this all started when these two teenage boys and a third boy took a picture of themselves wearing this dark green acne medication. And if you look at the photo, you can see it's clearly dark green. It's not black. But the hysterics were saying, oh, there's photos of them in blackface. And they were basically kicked out of the school. And so they've launched the lawsuit against the St. Francis High School in Mountain View, California, following the viral outrage last year. I think that's really a good one. Over in Los Angeles, the teachers union is pushing back on a plan to reopen schools due to structural racism. This is really getting out of hand. The United Teachers of Los Angeles, which is the largest and most powerful teachers union in California, has rejected Governor Newsom's school reopening plan. And the union leaders are labeling it as a recipe for propagating structural racism. Now, the plan was announced by Newsom and his Democrat supermajority in the state legislature. It provides $6.6 billion in taxpayer funding to accelerate the school reopening process while the coronavirus cases drop. Now, $2 billion would fund safety measures to support in-person instruction, such as personal protective equipment, ventilation upgrades, and COVID-19 testing. $4.6 billion would fund expanded learning opportunities, such as summer school, tutoring, and mental health services. I saw a photo the other day of the classroom of the future, where every desk is surrounded by a plexiglass box. It wasn't even clear how the students get in and out of there, but if I was a student in one of those boxes, I'd be taking cutouts of tropical fish and taping them to the inside of the plexiglass there. But really, if, saying that reopening schools, is, structured racism, how is it any more racist than before the schools were closed? And maybe that's their point. They're looking for an opportunity to impose some liberal changes on the education system. But I think we need to get these kids out of their homes and back to the schools because of the mental stress issues I mentioned before that we're seeing among young people. They need to learn how to socialize. They need to learn basic skills in order to get jobs somewhere down the line. And this is not helping the situation at all. All right, this is an interesting story. It's from Scoopy Web. And Sir Laurie Magnus appeared during an online policy exchange conference and basically came up with what I think is a really good idea. And he is saying statues with links to slavery should be allowed to stay if counter memorials are installed alongside them. All right, phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show. And once again, our phone lines are completely open. Area code 512-248-8252. And, the ad timers were a bit of a joke, so I hope that's not scaring you away at this particular point. We're still talking about wokeness and political correctness, or whatever they're calling it, this week. And there's an interesting story that came out of MrMera.com. This is over in Great Britain, and apparently there is a court case, a legal challenge against the Ministry of Justice and their policy of placing trans women in female prisons in Great Britain. And the argument in this case is that trans prisoners, that is men who claim that they identify as women, are much more likely to commit sexual assaults on the real women in these prison wings. Well, there's a dead giveaway right there, I think. All right. Boris Johnson wants to crack down on middle-class drug users with advertisements aiming to make cocaine as socially unacceptable as drunk driving. Well, considering how wonderfully well the commercial campaign on drunk driving worked, I'm not expecting that this is going to really do much better. I mean, both alcohol and cocaine are addictive. Boris Johnson wants this PR blitz to make it look like he's trying to tackle illegal drug use by the middle class. Obviously, the ultra wealthy are going to be allowed to continue having their nose candy. And as far as the poor, well, Boris Johnson doesn't really seem to care about their addictions. Now, this is an interesting story, and this is coming on out of PatriotRising.com. Wikipedia's founder is creating a new competitor to Wikipedia, this one promising free speech, claiming that Wikipedia has just been completely dominated by leftist opinion. He's certainly absolutely right about that. And he's admitted Wikipedia has become badly biased last year. And he's worried about the use of political propaganda by establishment editors on the site who consistently lock down articles pertaining to publicly discussed topics and figures. And for those of you who've been around what really happened for a very, very long time, I had my own little run-in with Wikipedia some years ago where somebody had actually put up a couple of articles about whatreallyhappened.com and yours truly, Michael Rivero. And I was very flattered and honored about that. Then I went in to look at the article about Michael Rivero, and it had been edited and changed to portray me as a raging anti-Semite. So I went in and re-edited it to say, you know, I'm a critic of the government of Israel, which is a little bit more accurate. And the next time I checked, it had been edited back to portray me as an anti-Semite. And when I went to edit it again, I was locked out of the edit on the explanation that Michael Rivero is not considered an expert on the subject of Michael Rivero. And after that, I've had very, very little use for Wikipedia. Over at Google, and specifically the Chrome browser, a new zero-day vulnerability has popped up as of February 11th. And this vulnerability was reported by Allison Huffman from the Microsoft Browser Vulnerability Research Team. And it's described as an object lifecycle issue in audio, which I'm not sure exactly what they mean. But Google has labeled the vulnerability as a high severity security flaw and has fixed the issue in the latest Chrome release, We Help. Now, alongside with that particular vulnerability, Huffman also recently reported another high severity bug, another object lifestyle issue in audio problem, and apparently another bug which created an insufficient data validation issue in reader mode. So we'll see what they're going to do about that. And again, considering how much this is costing the American people at a time when our economy cannot afford it, I'm wondering why the government, which is ready to just bomb the heck out of anybody who just looks at us cross-eyed, are not taking this issue more seriously. And we had this article we talked about last week saying, you know, private security corporations can't deal with this problem because of the sheer scale of it all. And it really is time for a national effort to just crack down on cybercrime because it's no longer a bunch of kids with a script generator in their parents' basement. These are large, organized crime operations that are bleeding computer users dry. Over on Microsoft, on their Exchange server, which has always been a bit of a headache, there are more zero-day flaws that are now being put into the use by the hackers. They're saying you should immediately update your Exchange server immediately, and this is Exchange Server 2013, Exchange Server 2016, Exchange Server 2019. Exchange Online is apparently unaffected by this, so that's a little bit of news. Interestingly enough, the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence issued a report Monday which basically said that the United States is unprepared to defend or compete with China on artificial intelligence. And there was another article that we posted to whatreallyhappened.com basically pointing out how China is very much ahead of us in the area of artificial intelligence. Okay. We have been talking about a movement called Right to Repair. And it's especially significant to us older people who had computers that you could open up and you could swap cards and you could add RAM and put in larger drives. And we talked, I think it was yesterday, about a new laptop that's being built around that same model of literally being able to dismantle it, reconfigure it, and put it back together. And it sounds quite attractive. But there has been this campaign on a right to repair coded into law. And European countries are really taking this seriously. They're moving toward introducing a universal right to repair on consumer electronic goods with the objective waste and encouraging manufacturers to make durability and repairability a key part of product design. Now, unfortunately, most of these electronic product manufacturers and certainly the distributors and retailers, their idea is you buy something and you use it for a few years, then you simply throw it away. It goes into a landfill. It's very, very toxic. It can poison the groundwater, and you buy a completely new product. It's called planned obsolescence, and people really are starting to fight back against that. And it's not just computers. It's going to be all washing machines, hair dryers, refrigerators, displays, televisions, and they must be repairable for up to 10 years. Now, this reminds me of an interesting piece of propaganda we used to hear about the old Soviet Union, where they would go on over there and they'd get film footage of the Soviets driving these very obviously old cars, and they'd say, oh, look how terrible life in the Soviet Union is because, you know, Americans all have brand new cars. Well, it turned out that was because Americans were having to buy brand new cars every few years. But in the Soviet Union, it was mandated for expensive, heavy goods like cars, refrigerators, and so forth to run for 25 years. And if you were the manager of a factory that failed to meet that goal, you were off to the gulags. So it looks like Europe has definitely had enough of this buy, use, throw in the landfill, buy completely new, especially with the tightening up of rare earth minerals. This is probably a good direction to go. And France is making it a legal requirement for manufacturers to include a repairability score for electronic goods that indicate how easily a device can be repaired by its owner. And I think that's a really good idea. And I think it should be applied to cars as well. Now, when I was a kid, cars were easy to repair. My very first car was a Volkswagen Beetle. I loved that car. And when something broke down, I could go down to the auto parts store, buy it, you know, get it in there with a socket wrench, and I was up and running again. And today's cars are really designed to be, you know, assembled by robotic factories and serviced by the automotive company licensed technicians. And it is actually very difficult to get in there and do anything more significant than refill the fluids, redo a belt, and change the spark plugs. That's pretty much it. I remember when we still had our Xterra, which I really liked, by the way, it started leaking oil around the valve covers. And I figured no problem, you know, take off the valve covers, put a new valve gasket in there, and we'd be off and running again. And then I was told that the valve gaskets were part of the head gasket itself. It was all one piece running from valves to cylinder head to valves. And to change the valve cover gasket, you literally had to remove the cylinder head and go through all that rigmarole. And probably that's why the authorized factory service centers were charging so much for that kind of stuff. But, you know, design of these products does have to take into account, especially during a hard economy, that the end user, the purchaser, the consumer, is going to have to maintain these things. You know, nice that we've got a guarantee, but those guarantees don't last very long. I remember in one case, we bought an Android tablet for my lady love, Claire, and she was working with it. It really was not very good, and about a month after we got it, it died. No problem. We had bought the extended service warranty. Unfortunately, the company making that particular tablet had gone out of business in the interim. So I'd rather have a product that I can work on and maintain and keep working myself rather than being increasingly dependent on some corporation somewhere to say, yeah, it's worth fixing your vehicle, or no, it is not. Getting on back to computers and media, Google today has announced plans to stop selling targeted ads based on a user's browsing history as part of an overhaul aimed at tightening up privacy. And the system doesn't really work anyway. I get ads for things I have absolutely no interest in, or I'll get tons of ads for things I already bought. So something broke down there. Unfortunately, Google's new policy does not include their mobile applications. All right. Apple is already looking to start work on a 6th generation cellular connectivity, 6G. They're already hiring wireless systems research engineers for the next generation 6G network, something for the 5G fanatics to scream about a little bit more. We have been talking about the deep fakes. And along that line, there was an interesting AI program, and they're taking photos of historical people from before the days of motion picture and using the AI to create moving versions of these still photos of people like Marie Curie and the rest. They're very convincing. It's very interesting to see these historical personages moving, and it shows the power of the technology. The deep fakes, on the other hand, are being created as much for nefarious purposes as for entertainment. And there is a growing concern that deepfakes could be used for propaganda purposes or lies or misleading. And there is a new deepfake out about Tom Cruise that has gone viral on TikTok. And the account Deep Tom Cruise released 3 videos of the star that are being described as the most alarming lifelike examples. Now, there are software engineers out there developing tools to help spot deep fakes. So if you've got a video of Donald Trump strangling a puppy and you're not really sure it's him, you could run it through the software and it'll say it's a deep fake. But already the people writing the deep fake software are looking at ways to get around that. So we're entering an age where you literally should not believe anything you are seeing on the TV set. And because it could be a deep fake designed to demonize somebody and make them look really bad for political reasons. Okay. We've been talking about Perseverance on Mars. It was a dramatic landing. It's got great cameras. It's got microphones. And it's really exciting. And one of the scientists working on the project is geologist and astrobiologist Abigail Allwood. And her particular mission regarding Perseverance is the hunt for alien fossils, because the whole theory behind Perseverance is that Mars once held life. Of course, those of us on Viking think it still does, and life is going to leave fossils. And I remember when I was a student, I spent a summer at the Los Angeles Museum of Natural History working with a guy named Dr. George Kanikoff, looking for microfossils. And you'd be surprised. I mean, everybody thinks fossil. Oh, it's the dinosaur, it's the Titanosaurus and T-Rex and everything. But there are microfossils, and you'll find them all over the place, of little tiny ocean creatures that have left their remains behind. And, you know, Perseverance is ideally suited to looking for those. So I wish Abigail a great deal of luck. And I hope Perseverance confirms that life is, in fact, still there on Mars, because Dr. Gilbert and I are definitely going to have a party. Now, here is a definitely interesting story, and it tells you sometimes how billionaires think. There is a billionaire in Japan, Yusaku Miyazawa, and that's a very old family name. I think it goes back to samurai times. He announced yesterday that he is going to choose 8 members of the public to join him on a trip around the moon on SpaceX's Starship rocket in 2023. And he made a video. I'm inviting you to join me on this mission. Me, pick me, pick me, pick me. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. Back with more news after these few words. And welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today, and we're going through the news here. The Earth is really rocking and rolling right now. We had a caller in talking about the quake swarm underneath Reykjavik. And down in Indonesia, Mount Sinabung basically erupted yesterday, just sending an ash cloud thousands of feet into the sky, apparently blocking the entire sky from view. And it's been dormant for centuries, but it came back to life in 2010, and now here we are in 2021, and it's out there making life difficult for the Indonesians. Meanwhile, over in Italy, Mount Etna is in its 8th phase of the current day eruption. It's erupted an 8th time now. Started middle of last month. Pardon me. It's raining hot pebbles of ash onto townspeople, and they're trying to use brooms to sweep up piles of pyroclastic dust and hot rock. After Mount Etna began its eruption on the last day of February. So it's getting really tense out there. Over in Thessaly, Greece, they had a very strong 6.3 earthquake. Was very shallow, which meant they really felt it there at the surface, and 22,000 people are estimated to have felt very strong shaking. Okay, we have a caller on the line, and we're going to go to Melissa in Maryland. Hello, Melissa. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, well, we might need more time to discuss this, but I'll ask to see if you have a quick response.
Okay.
I wonder how many states, I know Tennessee is one of them. I wonder how many states have laws that there is a definition to being a Republican or a Democrat. Do you happen to know the answer to that?
As far as I know, there is no binding official definition of a Republican or a Democrat other than the party to which you have signed up as a member and registered to vote as. And that's it. And that's probably one of the reasons why we have seen the Democrats and Republicans basically change so much throughout the years as they try and reposition themselves to capture the majority of the voters, which they're not going to have to do anymore because the elections are totally compromised. But as far as I'm aware, there's no legal definition of what it is to be a Republican or a Democrat.
And that's the case in all 50 states so far as you know?
That's as far as I know, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. I will just as long as I can, and thank you for the phone call. And we're almost to the end of the show here. Down in Tasmania, and you may have actually seen this, was on TV, there's this gentleman who hunts for Tasmanian tigers, which were thought to be extinct. And he's come up with photos and videos where he says they're alive. They have survived in the wild. Scientists, of course, are saying that, they want an actual specimen. They want to check the DNA against the remains of the last Tasmanian tiger who died in the zoo. But he's definitely out there with his cameras, and I wish him luck. Okay, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. It is very urgent that you do so. We'll be back tomorrow, Thursday. Aloha, America.